Well, hello everyone. This is so fun to see so many of my friends sign on and listen to this workshop. My name is Tony Ducklow. I'm the founder of Youth Ministry Land, and I have the privilege of serving as the executive director of Summer Festival Camp. If we've never met before, welcome. I'd love to connect with you sometime. If we have met before, what a strange time. And I'm glad we could have a moment to connect in this weird pandemic world. If you are anything like me, I'm guessing you've been trying to figure out what is the fall going to look like. I'm guessing if you were to sign up for a workshop like this, you are trying to figure out, what am I going to do this fall? Well, my hope is to share with you kind of a mental model, a way to think about this fall, and also some tips and some hot takes and some ideas to kind of help you get the ball rolling. So, if you anything like me, I bet your fall has, or in thinking about the fall, has felt a little bit like this. All right, the goal of this workshop is to help you not feel like that, not feel like a bear running on a treadmill trying to just survive, but thrive in this weird world. Okay, a couple hot takes that I have on what's been going on. First off, no one knows what is going to work this fall in youth ministry. Anybody who tells you that they do is probably trying to sell you something, or perhaps they're an expert trying to make themselves feel really confident, or perhaps it's they're just disillusioned. But the honest truth of the matter is no one knows what is going to work, including me. There are no silver bullets at this point. If anyone is offering you a silver bullet, perhaps they're in the business of selling silver bullets. So, that being said, I don't think everyone out there is malicious or bad. Just the truth of the matter is no one knows what is actually going to work this fall. I do know this, that it's time to throw out last year and last decade's game plan. What we've been doing for the last few years is probably not going to work. If your hope is to just turn your current ministry to just be all online and Zoom, I don't think that's going to work. I don't think teaching out of books like a lot of us do faith formation and Sunday school is going to work. I think it is time to start over and start from scratch. So where I think it's helpful to start is identify what your mission and vision is of your church, of your youth ministry. Review that, or if you don't have one, pick one, because that's the starting point, the true north on how we're going to make programming decisions for this fall. And then we're going to brainstorm experiments around that vision. And that's what I want to lead you through today. And I'll explain more about that in just a minute. So things to think about as we're navigating this. Number one, think engagement versus broadcast. In the spring, when everything moved online, we got really good at broadcasting. Or we at least got okay at broadcasting, right? We moved our services online. We moved youth group online. But so little of it was communal, back and forth. It was, here, listen to this thing, watch this thing, very little participation. And what people are finding, what experts are finding people actually stick around for is things that are engaging, things where there's a back and forth. So we're going to practice that right now, right? Like, This could just be a broadcast, but I'm going to try and work on making it a little bit more engaging. So why don't you say hi in the chat and say what church you are from. Now, that is a very low stakes engagement. That's all we're doing. I don't think that's going to be enough. But that's a step in the right direction of thinking engagement versus broadcast. I also think we have to think small and intimate. Gone are the days of 100-person, 300-person events where we get a lot of bang for our buck. I think ministry this fall is going to look like small groups of people, maybe gathering in person, maybe gathering online, but creating small and intimate spaces. I know for sure online, the bigger the group, the less likely I am to participate. I feel less known in it. So small and intimate is something to think about. Also, short and punchy. I got a lot of questions why this workshop was only going to be a half hour. And the main reason why is because that's about all people have attention for. I want the TED Talk version of your sermon. I want the 3-minute youth talk, not the 19-minute youth talk. The shorter and punchier, the better. Give me something that's easy to digest quickly, and give me more constant and churned out content. Short and punchy is the key. I don't think hour-long teaching sessions are going to be helpful this fall. I think we need to do some of the stuff like that the sticky faith people were talking about a decade ago. And one of those is setting up family to be faith leaders. If you're trying to think of who are my teachers, who are my leaders, how do we include the family who is the primary person in the students' lives right now? And then think connecting adults to students. The Sticky Faith people also suggested 5 adults should be connected to students for them to be likely to stick with the faith. How do we do that in this new format? Perhaps there's easier ways. So keep that in mind as well. And then lastly, think about where teens are hanging out both digitally and in real life. How do we connect with them where they're already spending time? Okay, so I want to talk about experiments. I love experimenting. This picture of this little kid pouring some liquids into each other just brought smiles to my face. I was never very good at chemistry, but I always had these joys that chemistry, that I'd be able to create a super potion that would do crazy things. And you all will have the chance to experiment this fall. And what do I mean by experiment? Well, I want you to think of programming that you can try. Programming that may or may not work. Take the value out of this is going to work and just what could work. And so we're going to brainstorm a bunch of experiments today of things that might work, could be really effective. The flip side of that is they could not be successful. No one could show up. No one could engage with them. But when we use the language of experiments, it takes the pressure off of them to be successful. Instead, we're brainstorming experiments, we're running those experiments, and then we're analyzing the results of those experiments. Pretty easy that way, in the fact that you're going to try stuff, you're going to see what works, and you're going to analyze why it worked, and you're going to learn from it. So I would, in your communication with people, call your programming experiments this fall. That way you can easily change what isn't working. Nobody is like, well, you said this. No, I said it was an experiment. We learned from the experiment that that's not helpful right now, so we're going to try something else. I think that language can be really helpful. Okay, so we're going to talk about brainstorming now, and brainstorming is something that some people love and some people hate. And my guess is that you've either been part of a really good brainstorming session or you've been a part of a really bad brainstorming session, or more likely both. And so what if you say, Tony, I'm just not that creative? Well, I want to tell you, friends, being creative is like a muscle that you can work out. So it's not necessarily an attribute, it's a skill that you can learn. And there's kind of three basic building blocks to being creative. One is copying. Hey, I saw somebody do this event. I'm going to try it over here in my context. Then there's transform, taking an idea you saw and tweaking it, changing it some, making it your own. And then there's finally the third one is combine, is taking a couple of ideas and merging them together. I'm trying to think of when the first drive-in movie was, probably sometime in the 40s or the 50s, and they took the idea of, oh, I really like being outside, and I like the idea of watching a movie. How can I combine those things? So those are kind of the building blocks of creativity. Now, in order to have things to copy, transform, and combine, we need to talk about soaking. Soaking is the process of just consuming and capturing ideas of what is out there. What are people doing? What is adjacent to this? What are things that have nothing to do with youth ministry that maybe could influence or shape youth ministry? So I love to, before a brainstorming session, I have all of the participants spend at least an hour, if they can a couple hours, soaking, trying to just see what's out there and consume all sorts of things and write down ideas that could go back to these building blocks of copy, transform, and combine. You need ideas to be able to do those. So places that you could soak for a couple hours as you're thinking about this fall. Surfing the youth ministry blogosphere. There are hundreds of blogs out there, all with brilliant ideas. I'm particularly fond of some of the Young Life folks' blogs. Young Life Leaders Now, I think, has some great, interesting ideas. Google image search of related topics. If you've got an idea, put it in a Google image search and see what people are doing visually. Reading a current events magazine such as Time or Newsweek, scrolling online newspapers, that kind of thing. Watching YouTube videos, searching youth ministry or fun events or ways to spice up Zoom meetings or online games you can play, and just kind of follow the rabbit trail of YouTube videos. Podcasts by event pros and other adjacent folks. Priya Parker wrote a book called The Art of Gathering, and then her book was being released, and then the pandemic happened, so she released a podcast all about events that she was helping people move online and think creatively. Really great ideas in there about helping people engage. Catching up on Facebook posts of one of the great youth ministry communities. I think there's a dozen of them or so that I'm a part of. Download Youth Ministry Group or Youth Pastors Today, just lots of them that you could join and just see what people are doing. Or post a question. What's one thing you've done this summer that worked really well? What's one thing this fall you're excited about? And there's also local and regional ones too, I know. I know some of our friends from the Covenant are on here, and there's a really great local Covenant youth pastor group where they share ideas that are working or not working. Scrolling through Pinterest, searching different topics or ideas within Pinterest. Spending time just studying the Bible. I think there's some really great things we can glean just by spending time in the Word. Scouting out what's hot aisle on Amazon. I should have put aisle in quotes. I know there's not really aisles, but just seeing what are people buying on Amazon. What does that tell us about where we're going as a world? Pick the brain of a colleague or mentor. Lots of great people on here. And I'm going to do that right now. We've gone through a list of places you can soak. Why don't you share in the feed one of your favorite places to soak or a place that I missed? Love to see what you're all thinking. Facebook groups that aren't connected to youth ministry. I'm a part of both an escape room group and a DJ group, and I tell you, I get a lot of ideas for youth ministry out of groups that are adjacent or not connected to youth ministry at all, but seeing what other people are doing to navigate this. And I always love going to researching the website of an inflatable or fun rental company. I always think they're doing really interesting things. Okay, so You've just spent a couple hours soaking, right? Just absorbing what's out there. And hopefully you've got a team around you who you can also have soak, some other volunteers, some parents who care, your pastor, somebody else who you can do this with, a couple of other people. So what's the next step? Okay, so this is my favorite kind of brainstorming model. And I know what you're saying right now. Tony, you said this is a creativity presentation. This is the most boring slide I've ever seen. Don't worry, I'll put it in space. Okay, there we go. So brainstorming. I like the process that Walt Disney kind of came up with, this idea of dream, focus, spoil. In my context, we often name it in the idea of rooms, of an attic, a living room, and a basement. But in the dream or attic phase, you spend time focusing on kind of your blue sky ideas. There's no idea that's too expensive, too dangerous. Parents wouldn't say yes to. Your leadership team wouldn't say yes to. Just this wide open. If you could just dream, what would you do? And the reason is that we do this is because they've found in product development, especially the Airbnb folks came up with this, is that if you start dreaming about how grand an experience is, when you get to the more reality phase, some of what is realistic gets pushed out a little bit more. And it's okay, what is the 10-star Airbnb experience like, right? You get off a plane, it's like the Beatles, people are cheering your name. You want to take surfing lessons, they have a surfboard and they have a surfboard pro. The best surfer in the world is going to teach you for the next 3 days, right? That's crazy. That's not actually going to happen. But all of a sudden, finding an Airbnb that has a surfboard and the owner knows somebody who can teach surf lessons, all of a sudden that becomes just a little bit more realistic. So you take that dream phase, right? You brainstorm, there's no wrong answers, nobody blocks. That's a key too within brainstorming, especially in the dream phase, is nobody says, well, that won't work or that can't work. All of that language is off the table. In improv, it's called blocking, where there's no idea to go, nowhere to go from there once it's blocked. And the problem with blocking, especially in the dream phase, is it doesn't create this community of safety, of vulnerability, where you can throw things out. So instead of blocking, you say yes and, right? You build on other people's ideas. So you take the ideas that you've soaked up, you think about how can I copy them, how can I transform them, how can I combine them, and you throw them up on a whiteboard, Post-it notes, whatever you want to do in kind of the dream phase. Then you circle back and you go to the focus phase or the living room. And you talk about what's realistic. How could we actually do that? What would that look like? What would it take? And you spend kind of the realistic moments of not what's going to go, what could go wrong, but what would we actually need to be successful and pull it off? And then finally, you move to the spoil phase. And I like to break these sections up. I like to put people in different physical spaces if we're together for each one of these to kind of put on the different hats. And the spoil or the basement phase has a lot to do with what is the worst that could happen? What's the bad ideas? What's the problems? What are the biggest risks? What are the weaknesses and the threats of this idea? And then you kind of circle back around with as much time as you have. So that's kind of the idea of brainstorming that I really like, and it kind of produces some really great ideas. The reason I think the spoil idea is really important is I'll illustrate this with an example we did at Summer Festival Camp about 8 years ago. It was the height of zombie fever when everybody was doing zombie stuff, Walking Dead, people just loved on TV. So we decided we'd invent a game called Zombies. And Zombies was a super creative game, but we made a few mistakes. One is we hired a gal from the Trail of Terror to do the makeup. And our zombies, our volunteer staff, were turned from normal humans into crazy, horrid creatures that you could hardly recognize. We thought it was a really good idea at the time. We thought having these zombies chase kids in the dark. We thought we didn't have enough zombies, so we invited a bunch of volunteers of people they've never seen before to dress up in zombie makeup and chase them. And we had not created a space where spoiling was safe and helpful, that people who weren't necessarily in leadership could speak truth to power. And a lot of people said, oh, we knew that was going to be a bad idea. And they were right. It created panic attacks. We had to send one kid to the hospital. Like, it was a mess. It was too terrifying, too scary, and we didn't create a space where creative feedback, negative feedback, constructive feedback could be heard. So all three are very important, is having the dreaming phase, having the realistic focus phase, and having the spoil phase to really strengthen and sharpen ideas. Okay, the other thing that's helpful in this is to name the constraints. Especially I would do that in the living room phase, is what are the things that we can't control? We can't control if parents are comfortable sending their students in the building or not. We can't control that there isn't a pandemic. We can't control our budget. Whatever it is, just naming those constraints, and perhaps not just the surface ones, but digging down a little bit deeper. Take a minute to list and write them out while you're doing this. I'm not going to have you put those in the chat. I'm sure that in the season is really easy for you to identify. But I think naming them lets you just understand what are the parameters that I have to work on, especially in that focus phase. But then, after you've named the constraints and you've taken the idea, ask this or finish this sentence. We can do that idea if we raise extra money. We can do that idea if we find a way to translate it really well online. We can do that idea if we have enough volunteers to drop off stuff at everybody's house. Name the resources that you need to be successful and pull that particular idea off. And then in the spoil phase, you can decide, is that realistic? Can we actually do this? I think that is what is helpful, is to identify what you can actually do. Okay, so this next section, I want to get really practical. We talked about kind of the soaking and the brainstorming. I want to do some soaking for you right now. I want to give you 50 ideas for experiments. And I actually think there might be more like 60 ideas for experiments in here. This is soaking, right? This is me throwing things at you for you to consider, what we could copy that, we could combine it, we could transform it, what would it look like? I'm just trying to kind of feed your mental energy right now. Now, what I don't want you to hear is this is 50 ideas you must do. I don't know if any of these are going to work, but these are experiments for you to try. You know your group. Which ones excite you? Which ones do you think would excite your students, your parents? Which would help your students grow in their faith journeys, their connection to Jesus? You'll have to decide those things. But here are just some kind of idea soaking fodder for you. Okay, 60 ideas for experiments. Here we go. Match students for mentors. What would it look like if you had a mentor and they met once a month with a student, just one-on-one via Zoom, or they would once a week text that student and they had another relationship with an adult? You could go sledding in the wintertime. Outdoor activity, don't have to go inside for that. Ice skating, once again, could do that social distancing. A drive-in movie, rent a movie screen, put up a projector, show a movie in your backyard, in your parking lot. What would it look like to invite the whole church? Frisbee golfing. There's lots of frisbee golfing places around. What if you equipped small groups to go out and do that, or you built your own on the church's property? Minecraft server. A lot of students at some point in their life played Minecraft. What if you did a throwback and said, okay, we're all going to meet once a week and play Minecraft together? What if you had postcards and delivered postcards to students' doors and gave them a pen pal, someone in the church who you knew was a little bit lonely or would at least write back to them, building kind of an adult-student relationship that way. It could be really fun to be getting mail this time of year. What if you were to create an amateur esport team? What if your video game students and an adult who was willing to hang out with them had practice once a week and competed in some local esport tournaments? Could be kind of wild. I know, 50 years ago, church basketball leagues were all the thing. So maybe esports teams for churches. Golfing. Maybe you've got a group of students who would enjoy going golfing together. Maybe you could create an amazing race around town for families to do, kind of a different challenges you lay out. There could be envelopes they could open. The whole thing could be contactless and just get people out of the house. You could do a drive-in youth event service, set up some speakers in the parking lot and create just a special service for the youth and partner with local churches to do it. You could build some kind of game, app-based game that you could do around the church parking lot or around your town. Some great apps to look into: Goose Chase, Clue Keeper, Click a Clue. There's probably other game apps I don't know about. If you know about another great app that you can build some kind of like game around pretty easily, throw that in the chat for us. I'm always looking for stuff like that. Maybe one day I'll build something for people to use that's free. Just something, build a game out of one of those great scavenger hunt apps. Also, Kahoot could be a really easy way to spice up an online Zoom meeting, is have everyone do Kahoot. If you don't know what that is, it's an app-based game, or there's a website you go to, and your phone becomes a buzzer, and there's questions you try and answer on the screen. This comes from a friend of mine, Mark. He said he had really great success with Zoom calls when he told his teens they could turn off their cameras, and they played games like drawing games that they didn't have to have their cameras on. Maybe students are more willing to participate in your group if they don't have to see themselves or they don't have to worry about how they look on camera, especially as the Zoom fatigue thing starts to happen when they're doing online school. Perhaps you can write a scavenger hunt, puzzle hunt, treasure hunt. There's a guy down in the Inver Grove Heights area who started just doing treasure hunts where he put a puzzle online and then he'd go hide something out in the public. And he's got a following of a couple hundred people who try and solve these puzzles. It might be thousands by now that he puts online and try and go win. He'll hide $20 in the grocery store ice cream aisle on the back of a ice cream container. Like just crazy kind of fun puzzly things you could do. A lot of you know I'm adjacent to the escape room world, and a lot of escape room companies have created online versions of escape room games. And what's great is you don't have to be where that escape room company is. So there's lots of great ones that have been reviewed. Ones where they put cameras on people's chests and you get to like control an avatar, real life avatar. Ones where it's like audio based, like a role-playing game like D&D. There's some where it's a little bit more like a video game. There's some where you print, cut, and play. But lots of online escape room adventures out there right now. Book club. You could start a book club. People read the book, and then once a month they gather on Zoom to discuss it. Movie club. Combine this with the drive-in movie or the backyard movie idea. Everyone watches a movie, and then you discuss it. I've seen this happen at my church with our young adult group, is people love getting together to watch movies and then talk about them. And they've got kind of a framework of what does this teach us about truth about God? What is the gospel truth in this movie? Does that line up with our spiritual teachings? An online fitness club where you all sign on at 4 o'clock and watch a YouTube fitness video together and all work out. Call a youth group friend and walk. Perhaps you pair off or make groups of 3, 4 in your youth group, and once a week you go on a walk and you call that person and write a guided discussion to help them know what to talk about. But 15-minute like interpersonal connections, like you're going on a walk with someone, could be really cool. I've seen youth leaders putting lawn chairs in front yards to catch up, do one-on-ones. That used to be A big thing when I was going through a high school youth group is our youth leaders would all try and do a one-on-one with us every semester. You could equip your leaders to just put a lawn chair in the front yard and catch up with a student. Just have a 30-minute discussion. How are things going? Do they like school? Just invest in that relational time. I have a lot of ideas that involve dropping things off, but one could be craft in a box. Drop off at a couple of different students who'd be into it, a box of some crafting supplies, and then do something together online, right? Build that craft together. I've got a gal in my youth group who loves to crochet. So what would it look like to partner her with a couple of other people? She could teach some basic crochets and drop off some yarn and a crochet hook so she could teach them how to do a pot holder or something simple. I think another interesting idea is creating non-real-time digital space for check-ins throughout the week. And you've probably maybe seen this in your own life, but people starting to do Marco Polo or Snapchat groups or Facebook groups where you just it doesn't matter if you're there at that exact moment, but someone can leave a voice message or put a prayer request or something in and just check in how the week's going. That could be creating a kind of a safe space for small groups to do something like that. You could play a board game, card game with a small group of a game that students love. I've got a couple of students in my youth group who love Pokemon cards. And so we're trying to figure out, how do we play Pokemon cards over the internet with a webcam or something? Just kind of a fun experiment of getting into the world of students and doing something that they love. Similar, play video games with students online. Perhaps you want to learn how to play Rocket League or Call of Duty or Minecraft, but just finding some time to play video games with students online as a way to connect with them. What's kind of fun about this too is sometimes you'll connect with students' friends as well, as you'll find yourself playing Rocket League on a small team of teenagers who are just learning the game too. And it's kind of fun, especially if you're bad at it, right? Because then they laugh at you. And there's some humility of oh, I'm not awesome. And there's some vulnerability that's built there. There's a website called cardtable.io that lets you play some sweet old school games. And you can build your own games on it. But you could play any card game. You could play cribbage. You could play checkers, just all sorts of fun, silly games on there that you could make. I've also seen versions of Cards Against Humanity. I've seen youth groups find tamer versions of that and get that loaded into there. But kind of a silly way to just play cards and do something online with people. You could have a film contest, right? You could film a bunch of people. Which is kind of fun, or have them shoot little 3-minute movies and do a premiere of all those movies and watch everyone's movies online together. Could be really fun. Similar idea is you could give everyone a scene of a movie like Toy Story and have them recreate it. This is one we're kicking around in my youth group, is how to do Shark Tank, where small groups create a video of pitches for money on how they love their neighbor. So they're given this assignment of, okay, there's $300 up for grabs on a way that you could actually love your neighbors and make a difference in your community. What would you pitch? What would that look like? And then have them film it, and then film, the sharks reacting to it, and then put that online and give away the money. Could be cool. Have food delivered to everyone's door. I don't know. We used to do pizza races where we'd order 2 pizzas and from different pizza places, and whoever got there first would get a really big tip. Maybe you could do something like that, or have food just delivered to everyone's door for one youth group night. Would be kind of a fun, silly surprise if everyone, is eating. I think McDonald's, right? McDonald's, you can do Uber Eats. Everyone gets a McFlurry or something silly. Perhaps you could create a text group around a spiritual practice, trying to get into it, a gratitude list. Every day you add to your list of things you're grateful for. And then you create a small group of students who you invite to do that with you, to kind of hold each other accountable. You could do takeout potluck in the park. You could do a socially distant bonfire. What would it look like to host a video game tournament? We talked about Rocket League, 3-minute, 5-minute games, have a bunch of people play. Could be an outreach event that you host online. I know there's trivia games out there you can buy. If you're really creative, you could write your own. But a game where people just listen to you read trivia and submit their answers via Google Forms. Create an event where someone wears a phone mount on their head and small groups control an avatar. This is an idea I love. I haven't done it yet, but I'm really excited for somebody to do this. Where we were going to call it robots, and you were a robot in the park trying to fix your spaceship, and students would have an avatar they controlled. I think this is a no-brainer, but create an online space where people can put prayer requests and people note that they prayed for them. In our camp group, we have a group, just a Facebook group where people put their prayer requests, and then after you prayed for it, you just like put a thumbs up symbol. I think something like that could be really great. Just space where students have a chance to pray for each other. On Sunday nights, if you've got a worship leader that students respond to, you could have them do a live concert. And students don't have to watch, they just listen as they're doing their homework or getting ready for the week, just to get, in that kind of spiritual mood. You could create monthly subscription style boxes with things to help students grow in their faith and drop those off. I think people just love getting mail and getting stuff in the mail right now or dropped off on their porch. And then use some of that stuff in part of your programming. Have a Zoom on while you all watch a sports game from your own homes. Are you loving the NBA Finals? What if you were to watch that with your students? You could also use art as a way to help people process their feelings, to talk about what's going on, and then create an online gallery with the art you created during a youth group session. You could drop off supplies at students' doors once again. You could have a masquerade outdoor silent disco where everyone had their own headphones, everyone was socially distant, and then they were just dancing like crazy. I think, this is a personal opinion, this is more living room talk, but you'd want them to wear a mask because you're going to be singing along to the music and you want to catch that germs, but that's completely up to you. You could do a cooking challenge over Zoom. Maybe you drop off all the supplies to make cookies and you all make cookies at the same time. You could create bingo cards of things to do. My wife created a ice cream bingo thing this summer, and she's been trying to hit all these ice cream places. Maybe you make a fall bingo card, and students are able to talk about what they do, what they've been doing. I know my friends up at Servant of Christ have had a lot of fun playing kickball with their students this summer. That's an idea. You could bring in a guest to each of your youth group, someone from your congregation, and then you could play a game about a fun fact with them. Maybe they have a secret hobby that nobody knows about. Maybe they don't know what job it is, and play a 20 questions game. Or if they know who the person is beforehand, they could try and guess, and you could put a bag over them. But use it as a way for them to get to know someone else in the church. You could do a minute-to-win-it tournament, drop off supplies, do the Kleenex thing or the Oreo on the forehead over Zoom. That would be kind of silly. Having leaders share testimonies. You could have them shoot little 3-minute videos on their phone and send those out in the middle of the week as just some more content. You could do an online murder mystery. We had a lot of fun turning the board game Clue into a giant Zoom game where people dressed up in character and students interacted with them to try and solve the murder mystery. Messenger Mafia, or Mafia Online, the classic youth group game where you're trying to figure out who the Mafia is. You can play that over a week, over whatever chat app that you want. Make little groups of who's the Mafia with a big chat with everybody in it. Also play that as just a fun game night. Also, the Jackbox games I know are really popular. There's a screen that you can share via Zoom, and then you all play the game on your phone, kind of trivia games and drawing games and that kind of stuff. The folks at Crowd Control Games make really fun things. You could do a game show night with them. There's a game I love called Mind Reader, where you use the poll function on Zoom meetings to, you say, okay, you have a special guest. You ask them, okay, what Harry Potter club would you be a part of? Everybody puts in the poll what they think the person's answer is going to be. You reveal the poll to see what's most popular, and then the person reveals, oh, I'm actually in Gryffindor. You could have your leaders take over the social media account for a day, do a kind of a story takeover. Could be fun. There's lots of games you can put on social media stories. Check out downloadyouthministry.com for $3 or $4. You can download all these pictures and stuff you can load into your story to create engagement that way. You could drop off supplies for games at home and use those supplies. Like, I just have this vision of dropping off dollar store puzzles and doing a 36-piece puzzle race with everybody who can build the puzzle the fastest. Have students film themselves sharing a faith story and create a private collection. You don't want to make these public. Students will get probably pretty alarmed by that, but just a collection of students sharing their faith journey for the youth group. Embrace TikTok culture. If your students are on TikTok, you might want to check it out and perhaps choreograph your own dance. Be silly on it. I know vulnerability breeds vulnerability. So if you can find parts to share your own faith journey in a vulnerable way that is still safe, students might really respond to that. Teach a small group about a hobby you enjoy, either in person or online. Share a 3 to 5 minute video teaching on Instagram once a week. So students have it. Well, Instagram can only be 1 minute, but finding a way to show like a 3 to 5 minute video of what you might teach beforehand. Get logos and videos made at Fiverr.com. Perhaps your youth group has a logo, or you could get something cool made on Fiverr to just kind of splash up your social media feed or your Zoom calls. And using Canva to improve your social media skills. Great free resource is making great stuff on Canva. Okay, that was a lot. Like I said, that's not to tell you this is what you should do, just some ideas to get you thinking. I've got more at youthministryland.com/ideas/ put what you think in the chat. Did I miss any ideas? Do you got anything you're really excited to try or you want someone to try? It's not for you. Like, put it in the chat. I'm going to keep this webpage updated with all of the ideas I just went through, plus any ideas that you give me in the chat right now. Okay, final thoughts. Experiment and share what you find. Let us know what worked. What did you try? What didn't work? What was a failure? And what are you going to do differently? Think experiential and think communal. I just love this idea of delivering the content before the meeting so that the actual meetings are short and just the discussion piece. What are you going to do to create community with your group? This is just a personal pet peeve. Social media isn't just for broadcast. You want to be responding. You want to do the social part of social media, engaging with people's content, not just sharing your own, and not just broadcasting your events, but creating content that's helpful for people. Over communicate, especially in this time when everything has to be digital. You cannot communicate enough. Model the leadership you'd like to see. If you want your leaders to be vulnerable, you have to be vulnerable. If you want your leaders to step up, you need to step up. And then finally, Jesus is still on the throne. This is an adventure. You got this. I know that it's a crazy time, but this is a chance for us to be innovative, to take the ideas that we talked about of soaking, of creating experiments, brainstorming those experiments, and then learning. And being innovative will help students in their faith journeys. God will use that and bless that if he chooses. All right, will you pray with me? God, thank you so much We love you so much. Thank you for this chance to be innovative and creative and be together. I pray you would bless these friends of mine as they journey together, as they try and figure out how to do youth ministry during a pandemic. Bless their efforts, Lord. And Lord, we just pray that students would take steps in their faith journey, that this year would not be for nothing, that it wouldn't be a wash or we're waiting for this to end, but you would use it to draw us and students close to you. Jesus, your name is powerful. All the glory to you. Amen. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. I'm going to be on a Zoom call after this. The link is in the chat there. If you have questions you want to ask me in person, hop on that Zoom call. I'll hang out for 30, 40 minutes and we can talk a little bit further. If not, have a really great rest of your day. Thanks so much for joining us. Lots of love to you. If there's any way that Youth Ministry Land or myself can be a resource to you, would love to do that. Have a good day, everyone. Talk to you later.